Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Anda sedang menonton Agenda Awani dan malam ini kembali ke salah satu topik yang begitu ruji di Agenda Awani, iaitu tentang inovasi masa depan dan bagaimana masyarakat akan berubah. Oleh itu saya gembira kerana terima kasih kepada Akademi Sains Malaysia dan juga Mark Plus Inc. Seorang tokoh antarabangsa dalam bidang teknologi, pemasaran, penyatuan keduanya dan pelbagai lagi. Beliau seorang profesor tetapi juga seorang penulis buku, seorang pengkaji, seorang pengkritik dan sebagainya. Malah Mark Plus Inc. mengatakan bahawa he is the next Philip Kotler. Dan dalam konteks itu, izinkan saya berbicara dalam bahasa Inggeris. I would like to welcome Professor Mohan Soni, Director of Center for Research in Technology and Innovation, Kellogg School of Management in America. And I moderated a session with Prof. Soni at Madrid for ASM recently, and my introduction was very easy because all I did was Google up what the students of Prof. Soni said about him, and there's not a single bad remark. Imagine that in the days and age of proliferation of whatever you feel put on social media, no one said any bad thing about Prof. Soni. That's very, very impressive. And I want to go straight to Prof. Soni because he has very little time, because he's very busy and very much sought after. So the topic at the ASM Convergence Talk was mega trend driving innovations in a hyper-connected world. But what I want to water it down to is we have been talking a lot about innovation, even in these parts of the world. And we know that things are changing. Technology plays a big part. But going forward, there are mega trends, and hyperconnectivity is one of them. It's a no-brainer because even for new media, social media applications, Malaysian rank up there among the busiest user of social innovation in that sense. So how do you look at convergence of ideas and thoughts and people driving hyperconnectivity?
You know, one of the really interesting implications of the hyperconnectivity is the democratization of innovation. Okay. The app economy that we now live in, where in the 10 years ago, if you wanted to start a company for software, you had to build software, you had to build the whole company from the ground up. But today, a 13-year-old kid can write an app and get it to market using the App Store. So we are seeing literally billion-dollar valuations created overnight. So there is the barriers to entry in terms of the infrastructure and the capital that you need to start a company or to take advantage of this platform have really been lowered. So we're seeing a lot of innovative activity, and I think it's actually a great time to be an entrepreneur, to take advantage of this infrastructure that has been created.
And that must mean that we must also be creators, not just users of this new technology.
Absolutely.
But that would be a relatively new experience because all this while, we've been taking the finished product and then applying it to what we do. But that now, from what you have presented, that's not necessarily a bad thing because that's a whole slew process that will in turn reverse the trend, because from using the technology, we then can adapt it back to make it better than where it originates from.
Absolutely. In fact, there is no shame in imitating and adapting something that has already worked. So there are a number of models, a number of businesses that have been created in the US that can be adapted to the ASEAN context very successfully, taking into advantage the difference in the infrastructure, people's purchasing power, use of credit cards, and so on. And we've seen this in India with companies like Flipkart that have taken Amazon's model and adapted it. Alibaba has done something very successful in China. So I think there's a really interesting opportunity to study carefully what has worked in the Western world and then look at ways in which you need to modify it to the context and the cultural, socio-cultural, and economic context here. But once you do that, then I think it will promote the conditions for the ASEAN countries to become hubs for innovation that can then be transferred back. So it's a step-by-step process. First you adapt, and then you can start to create your own innovations. We've seen that done in hardware in China, and I think it can be done in software and applications and IT in the ASEAN world.
What needs to change? And I love it because you were not born in America, but you moved there and you built your career there. So you understand both sides of the world. So in order for Asian countries to really change, sometimes it's not the technology, it's how we approach things. It's what we have been thinking all this while, things that are very sacred to us. But now we must change it, and we must adapt in our mind too, not just in terms of using the product, but how we think, because then we can adapt to the processes that we do. But you know that it's not as easily done here.
Yeah, in fact, if you for being creative, for being an entrepreneur, one of the things you have to accept is risk, and the fact that you will fail more often than you will succeed. So that is a cultural shift that needs to take place. The idea that failure is okay. We grow up in countries, even from India where I come, when I was young, the idea that you would try something that was very risky and not take a safe job and make a safe, comfortable living was a very foreign idea. But now it's becoming more acceptable to take those chances. But I still find that in many parts of the world, in emerging markets, there's still the notion that why wouldn't you go work for the government, which is safe? As opposed to that, why is Silicon Valley successful? Because people wear failure as a badge of honor. It's a qualification, not a disadvantage. So as parents, we have to accept the fact that our children may take risks. As managers, we have to accept the fact that the people that work for us, that it is okay to experiment, it is okay to take a chance. Because you know what, when you innovate, you will break a few things.
Yes. So I have to go for the first break, but once we are back, I want to take one of the mega trends that is talked about is how the connectivity now introduces us to stuff like cloud computing, and big data now follows with how this tremendous amount of data, if we mine it, we can make sense and use it to our advantage. So how is that going to change things again? Because we do know that the bulk of the population of the world reside in the Asian side of things, but sometimes geography doesn't matter because technology empowerment is. So let's see how we can marry all those two together and predict the changes to the life as we know it in these parts of the world. That after this short break. If you go on social media, there's this hashtag, Swani Says, and that's dedicated to Prof. Mohan Soni. And I want to add to that because today, for the first time, I hear about reverse flow of the Ganges. And it's a very sacred river in India. And now forever my picture of it will be changed because I'll be seeing the water moving upwards, not downwards to the sea. And this is Professor Soni's metaphorical look at how we are reversing the trend of the world where the developed world just sends stuff to us. But now with adaptation and innovation, we are reversing that by sending innovation back to them with added value and adaptation, of course. But in order to do that, we've discussed how we must change the mindset too. And it's good to have failures, for example. However, moving forward, if we take specifically how big data and cloud computing, network world will change things, I guess we don't have to step in the dark anymore. Things can be narrowed down to specificity that the computer's reach can tell us. For Asian, that's very crucial because we have large populations, for example, but maybe spread out across a big geographical area. So how do you see the next few years slowly or even urgently changing because of this?
Yeah, I think that both the convergence of three sort of intersecting trends, mobility, the cloud, and big data and analytics is going to create some very interesting phenomena, particularly for emerging markets. So if you look at the benefit of what the cloud allows you to do, you don't have to own infrastructure. You don't have to care where your computers are, where your storage is, where your memory is, and where your processing is. You can essentially just rent capacity from without location being relevant. So I think the cloud is bringing the ability for even small companies and SMEs to get access to enterprise class software and just by setting up on Amazon Web Services or any cloud provider. So that's really what the cloud is doing. And what mobility does is allows you to actually access that cloud-based information anywhere and everywhere. It is always with you. Now you combine that with the power of analytics, which goes by the name of big data. The value proposition there is that now I can use information that combines your transactions with your location, with your interactions on social media, to create a very rich behavioral profile, and then use that data to be able to give you information and marketing offers at the right time, at the right place, through the right channels. So you can now do predictive marketing, and in fact even an idea in the future that I would call anticipatory marketing, which is I read your mind and I almost tell you, I think you may be interested in this. We're seeing some early examples of that. For example, when you shop on an e-commerce site like Amazon, when you're trying to buy something, they said, have you considered this other thing? Because people who bought this also bought this. So that's just an early example of what our ability to, and the more data that you are able to look at for an individual customer, the richer the profile that you can create for them. So this is the power of mobility, the cloud, and big data coming together. Now the only challenge there is that we have to be careful about information security and privacy, because that data, if it is exposed to hackers, can also create significant more damage, because now all of your information now is going to be in the cloud.
Correct. Somehow, every time I discuss the future, like big data, Internet of Things, I cannot help but feel from the cultural value perspective, it sounds more and more Asian. Knowing your customer well. I mean, in the old days, people in Asia don't just sell stuff. They convince you because they know you. This product is good, and I really believe it because I've tried it. And it's by word of mouth. It's that closeness of society. And now with hyperconnectivity, it's almost going down that path also, which means you know more about the numbers that you only see before. But now you know the habits of that particular number. It's not just another customer, what the customer likes and dislikes and stuff like that.
You're absolutely correct. I remember when I was a child growing up in India, we would go to the meat butcher, and he knew exactly what our preferences were. He knew what my father liked, and he said, I have the right cut of meat for you. I've been keeping this for you. So it was very personal. And that's where we started out. Absolutely, it was a person-to-person, very personalized relationship management. And then we entered into the age of industrial production, mass markets, where the customer suddenly became anonymous. And the distance between the provider and the customer was much greater. So we were just a nameless, faceless entity consuming toothpaste and cars and so on. We are, in a way, you are coming full circle, but there is a distinction now. It used to be personal and high touch. Now it is personalized and high tech. So technology is becoming the intermediary that is providing you with that intelligence. So so when I shop on a website and it seems to know me, it's not like there is a human being behind there who knows me, but it is the algorithm. It is the data that allows me to have a personalized experience. So now the beauty is that in the old days we had personal but limited reach. And then we went to lot of reach but not very personal. Now you have the ability to be personal and scalable. So you can actually have scalable, personalized relationships by leveraging technology and connectivity.
Let's go for the last break, but once we are back, sometimes what's stopping all this is only our fear of things that we don't know. Because this will bring about changes. So I would like to tap your Asian side of your thinking hat into this matter, because if I'm in America, it's a no-brainer that I talk about big data, Internet of Things. That's like the next holy grail, the new oil of the 21st century. But in Asia, maybe from whatever perspective we look, sometimes it's not exactly that we want it. So let's go there. And I want to tap your mind on that, because you took Bachelor of Technology in Electrical Engineering. You're basically an electrical engineer by qualification. And then you went to take a postgraduate diploma in management. And then if I look at your CV again, Masters of Arts from University of Pennsylvania. Then you went for your PhD, but it's in marketing. So, you know, coming from my traditional background, whether, you know, your parents will say, why don't you become an accountant? If you don't want that, it's okay. Go and become a doctor. Okay, you don't like doctor accountancy, become an engineer, or at the very least, become a lawyer. But you went all over the place. But in the 21st century, I see this as multidisciplinary, so I want to add that, the fear of the unknown, right after this break. After talking to Prof. Sony, I wish, because I haven't done my postgraduate degree, so I want to do it in data mining. So that's just me. But Professor Sony has been an electrical engineer, then he went through the management courses, then he took Masters of Arts and PhD in marketing. So you're the poster child of being multidisciplinary, and it works really well in the 21st century.
Yeah, you know, in fact, we were talking about big data earlier, and if you think about who are the people who are going to be able to convert this oil, crude oil, into, you know, gasoline, they're the data scientists. And a good data scientist is someone who really has two channels in their brain. You know, the one channel is the knowledge of the business and the domain, which tells you what are the right questions to ask.
Yes.
And on the other side of the brain, the other channel is the technical IT and technology expertise that helps you understand how do we get the answers to the questions that we want. Yes. So really, to me, an ideal data scientist is someone who is both left brain and right brain and uses their whole brain, which therefore tells me that the future really belongs to people in general in business who combine art and science, who combine quantitative analysis with intuition, who combine analysis with synthesis. Yes. And that invariably requires you to look at multiple disciplines in your education, because when I went through engineering school, engineering teaches you the analytical way of thinking, it's analysis. Yes. But then as I did marketing and some of the other liberal arts disciplines, liberal arts gives you a bigger view, a bigger picture, it allows you to see patterns. So I strongly encourage the kids who are going into college and even their parents to really think about the fact that you need to build out all parts of the brain, all sides of the personality. But with that said, maybe you do need a root discipline where you can be good in. So that's why my root discipline is engineering. That has always helped me in life. But I've built upon that, you know, the right side of my brain, the creative part, by then doing, you know, marketing and so on. So it is, in fact, we don't have a choice but to be multidisciplinary, because hyperconnectivity is not only happening in networks, hyperconnectivity is happening across disciplines. Yes. So you're really trying to connect the different ways of thinking to bring the art and science of
Then the question is, how would an institution of higher learning, and you've discussed that in the seminar and talk, align themselves to these future needs? Do they remain as they are, but the students themselves match the courses to what they think they want to be in the future? Or you can tweak the ecosystem in universities to prepare. I think in the late 90s, you single-handedly came up with 2 new subjects or courses for students to be able to go into. But, you know, innovation, does it have to happen also from where we train our next future leaders?
Absolutely. I think, you know, I remember a quote about education that can be applied to education, which is, I have met the enemy and they are us. So we are the weak link, we as faculty, we as universities, because we can't blame our students for not being multidisciplinary if we operate in silos, if we have departments, and if we have a very narrow view of our discipline. And the fact is that even in the US today, multidisciplinary research is difficult to publish, you know, and our faculty are not trained to be multidisciplinary. In fact, the definition of specialization is someone who knows more and more about less and less until they know everything about nothing. So we have to change that point of view to really create multidisciplinary courses and curriculums, which will require us to actually have faculty team teach. So in fact, for instance, at Northwestern, we have a course on, it's called NUvention. It's a entrepreneurship course. That NUvention class is taught by multiple faculty, like from the engineering school and the business school. So even if the faculty themselves are not cross-disciplinary, by coming together in cross-disciplinary teams, they can give students the experience. So I really think that universities need to rethink the experiences that they're creating for their students and to encourage multidisciplinary tracks, because we absolutely cannot expect students to figure this out on their own. We have to change and we have to evolve in terms of our own skills, the way we teach, and therefore the incentives that you need to create for the departments to work together, to collaborate.
If that happens, ideally, wouldn't the graduates then be knocking at the employer's door or the already established institutions, whether they are corporate or civil, public service in that sense, and being frustrated? Because here I am, a multidisciplinary thinker. Of course, when I go out, I want to do new ways of doing the old things, but people in power, corporate or otherwise, might not be thinking the same way. That's not the way how we do things. This is exactly how we do things, and you must conform to these SOPs or KPIs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that change is needed across the entire system. So if you come with a multidisciplinary knowledge and I only know how to hire people who fit into boxes, then it creates some frustration. But I think that the leading edge companies understand that they need this multidisciplinary thinking. The problem is sometimes that the leadership may be somewhat traditional. So, but initially you may find greater acceptance amongst, say, consulting firms or professional services firms that are being pushed by the clients to go in this direction. Or you might find opportunities, say, in design or in technology. So I think the industry will move in that direction, and I think that there is enough opportunity for people who are multidisciplinary.
I think your first visit to Malaysia is astounding to the impact that you have garnered, and I hope you'll come again because you haven't sampled the best mango in the world, which is harum manis. You saying that it's from India. Let's compare.
We will leave that as a matter of debate. So this is a challenge that still remains open, the Indian mango versus the Malaysian mango.
So you must come again. That's a short form of things. Thank you so much, Prof. Professor Sony, for making time. All the best for your trips and travel. And hantarkan pandangan anda sendiri tentang perkara ini kepada pelbagai platform yang Astro Awani ada, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, ataupun terus muat turun aplikasi Mudah Alih iOS dan Android supaya anda boleh menonton episod seperti ini secara langsung di gadget Mudah Alih anda. Sekian, selamat malam, terima kasih. Thank you so much.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure.